Let's take a look at the Acebook 8. This is from Blackview, and they're a company from Hong Kong. They messaged me and they said, hey, do you want to look at the Acebook 8? And I was like, I don't know if I really need a laptop at the moment, but then I looked, it looked really nice and sleek. You know, it's 1.6 kilograms, not too bad. Only 19.9 millimeters thick. And then this, I want you to look at this. So the entire time that we're doing this video, I want you to think about this price, $319.99. It goes up and down, but that's like what the sale price is right now. So just consider that. After I saw that, I was like, you know what? This might be something that people in the audience would like to look at and see like what kind of laptop can you get for that, because it's hard to find a laptop in this size with decent specs that's usable and has 16 gigabytes of RAM. That's like the main thing for me, is it's also got some RAM, so you can have a few things open, have a bunch of tabs open, and actually do some work. So what we're going to do is go through the specifications, and then I'm going to put it through its paces and do like the benchmarks and stuff, and then talk about who I think it's good for. Thanks to Whokeys for sponsoring this video. Now these are OEM Windows keys. That means that you do your own tech support. You're not going to be relying on Microsoft, and they're generally locked to the hardware. We got a coupon code. Click on buy now. Put in coupon code TS25. Hit apply, and that price comes down. Now when you compare that to the outrageous prices from Microsoft, you'd have to buy this many times to equal the price of one regular key from Microsoft. As of right now, this Windows 10 Pro key will unlock Windows 11. We also have Windows 10 Home. Windows 11, you can buy it directly, Windows 11 Home, and we have 2 flavors of Office. Once you're finished, all you have to do is click on your user account up here, go to your user center, click on My Purchase Orders, just view keys and codes, and you can just copy and paste your key, hit start, type activate, click on activation settings, paste it in there, click on next, and you will be activated. So head on over to Whokeys.com to get yourself an OEM Windows key at a price that makes sense. So we've got a 15.6-inch 1080p screen. It's an IPS screen, and you have an 84% screen to body ratio. The weight is 1.6 kilograms. The dimensions 359.52 by 233.83 by 19.9 millimeters. Now it's got the 12th generation Intel Core N97. That is a quad core with 4 threads. It's not hyper-threaded, and that's because it's all efficiency cores, which means that it uses less power. It doesn't go quite as crazy fast as some of the stuff out there. The single core performance is pretty good, and you'll see in the benchmarks when we get to that. But it's not really designed for like modern crazy gaming. It's only got the Intel UHD graphics, the integrated graphics. It's okay. I mean, you can play like a lot of indie games, a lot of older games and that sort of thing. But this is designed for like office use, web browsing, general use. You can do some video editing on this as well, because it is a quad core, and we used to do all of our editing back in the day on an Intel quad core, so that'll work just fine. The storage, 512 gigabyte NVMe/SATA SSD. NVMe/SATA. This is a SATA drive. I was very SATA to find out, but I went and looked at the price again and thought, okay. But you'll see in the benchmarks, that's where I discovered that this was a SATA drive. They say that it's expandable up to 1 terabyte. I took the screws off the back and started trying to pry the back off. It's on there so good that I decided not to break it. It was like getting to the point where I'm like, I'm going to break this thing. So the back is really well sealed. Clips and everything are they're tight on there. So you can expand it up to 1 terabyte if you want to take the back off, but you're going to need some special tools. My little plastic shims and stuff, they were not shimmy enough to get in there. I got them under there a little bit, but it started bending, and I was like, no, I don't like this, so no. All right, 38 watt hour battery with a 36 watt charge. As for the audio, we have 2 speakers. They actually sound okay. So you can't really hear it there with the mic, but they sound okay. I mean, they sound like laptop speakers. I don't know. It's not like anybody's going to put 5 of these laptops around and use them for home theater. They sound like laptop speakers. They're passable. That's pretty much all you need to know. They're stereo at least. And then we have 2 microphones, which is also interesting. So you have stereo mics. And we have a 1 megapixel webcam, which honestly is kind of all you need. It's 1 megapixel. All right, let's take a look at all the ports. Before we get into the ports, no USB 4, but just rewind your brain a couple of years, and that's where we are with speed and ports and all that kind of stuff, everything. Right on the right side, if you're sitting in front of it, we have TF card, we have USB 2, USB 3, and we have a combo mic and a headphone port. On the other side here, we have USB-C. Then we have HDMI, so you can hook up one external monitor. And then we have another USB 3.0 port. And then we have an alternative power plug port, which is interesting. So you've got a DC jack, but I was using the Type-C to charge it, and that worked just fine. So use Type-C, use DC jack. The only thing that comes in the box is a manual with no instructions on how to take the back panel off. And this, just a very small charger. And as you can see, it's DC, but it will charge with USB Type-C. And it only needs a 12 volt 3 amp charger, so Just this tiny little charger with DC. It comes with Windows 11 Home, and you can keep that on there or you can upgrade it. I would probably move over to Linux, but it depends on what you're doing. If you're like an office user, you'll need to keep Windows on there. Let's talk about the screen for a minute. It's really pretty. It's an IPS display, 220 nits, so bright sunlight, no, but by a window, not going to be too bad. It's a 60 hertz screen. If you want to plug in an extra monitor, it's HDMI 2.0, and that'll power up to a 4K 60 hertz monitor. As far as the keyboard goes, I think it feels pretty good. Like, for something that's designed for someone on a budget, the keyboard feels really good, actually. I'm going to say this is like a 7 or 8 out of 10. I think my 10 out of 10 is always going to be the ThinkPad. But this is a lot better than most. It does have some good feedback when you're pressing it. Poppy. It's not mushy. The keys don't wobble. There's not a lot of play. So I think they did a very good job with the keyboard. We have a number pad as well. The buttons are in good spots. There's not a lot to complain about when it comes to the keyboard. We got our function buttons. So yeah, I'd say the keyboard is really nice. And then our power button is actually on the keyboard. It's not separate on the top or the bezel or anything like that. And then down on the front, we have a nice smooth wrist rest area. And then the center there, we've got a touchpad. The entire thing clicks down. It's a touchpad. I don't love touchpads. It works. It does its job. And then we have a little fingerprint reader right there as well. And it's on the top left of the touchpad, if you can see it there. And look at that. We do have 180. So it can go full 180. Doesn't go in reverse, or anything like that. A couple different colors. You can get it in either the frost silver or the gunmetal gray. Their website says 18.2 millimeters, but the specs say 19 point something. So you know what? Because they have two different specs on their website when it comes to the thickness. Yeah, it looks like it's just 18 point something, maybe close to 19, but it's not 19.9. So, okay. Yeah, it's thin. It's under 20 millimeters. That's what we'll say. Let me go through the battery life. 96 hours on standby, 4.5 hours just using it, browsing the web or doing whatever, and then 3.5 hours like playing video games or watching videos, and then 7 hours listening to music, which is interesting if you just want to have music going, turn off, I guess. I have not tested the music. Did let a movie play for a little while, and yeah, a little over 3 hours. So the cooling on this is nice. They've got a nice big copper heat pipe on the inside and a fan on the bottom. It's got some vents down there too. So they do a pretty good job of dissipating heat, and it's extremely quiet. So we'll leave it at that, but it does a really good job. Like, did not get as warm as a lot of the other stuff I've tested out there. All right, so let's do some benchmarks and just see how this stacks up. All right, here's our Valley score. With that fancy Intel UHD graphics, we were able to achieve 15.7 FPS on 1080p high. With a minimum of 9.7, the score is 658 if you're playing along at home. Next up, we're going to try superposition. This is another Unigem benchmark that taxes the GPU and the CPU, and I'm going to run this at 1080p medium. The superposition results may look a little low, but it's about exactly what I expected from the CPU because this is not a graphical powerhouse. While you can play some games, modern AAA style graphical games, not going to be so much of a thing on this. Score 888, minimum 5.58, and the average of 6.65 FPS. If you're playing along at home. All right, let's take a look at Cinebench. Now, first off, I want to take a look at the single core score, which is okay at 988. And you can see there where it stacks up. It's kind of funny that the older Threadrippers, the single core performance is similar. But then when we move over to the multi-core, it's a bit different of a story because this is not like designed to be a multi-core powerhouse. So the multi-core score 2706, which is totally fine for like normal desktop use and maybe doing like some video editing or something. If you're doing tons and tons of multitasking 3D work, that's not what this machine is for. And let's take a look at Geekbench. Our single core score is 1256 and the multi-core score is 2992. I'll scroll down so you can see each individual test because depending on what you're doing with your system, some of these will matter more to you than others. So if there's something you want to see, you can go ahead and pause and take a look at that individual test. All right, let's move on over and take a look at the OpenCL score, which is the integrated GPU. And I'll scroll down again so you can see all of the details here. All right, let's run a stress test with Ada64. Click on the fire and let's start the stress test. I'll be back in 15 minutes. We'll see how it's doing. Okay, it's been more than 15 minutes and the thermals look really good to me. We've been hovering in the high 60s, around 70, pretty much the whole time. And let's see here what we've got. When we take a look at the sensors over here in hardware info, yeah, take a look at that. That's great, but this is not a crazy high powered part, so low power and not so bad. It's also very quiet, so let's go ahead and test this out. My desk is a mess, so all right, that's just the sound sitting here at the desk. Now I'm going to put it in front of the laptop and we'll see how loud it is. You know, it mostly hovered around 44, 45. This is the highest that I could catch it. So 47.2 decibels, it's really quiet. So not really a big deal. This is where I discovered that this actually has a SATA drive, because these are SATA speeds. So I opened up Crystal Disk Info, and sure enough, yeah, it's a SATA drive. So, I mean, with the entire package, it's not really that different. But yeah, the SATA in 2024 is a bit weird, because an M.2 is not that much more expensive. And I mean, a lot of times it's about the same price. So we'll say interesting choice here. So I'm also curious to see how they've got this set up, because we have 2 hard drives installed right here, but I don't think there's 2 hard drives. So we'll go ahead. Oh, good Lord, this thing. Let's have a look at our disks here to see what's going on under the hood. And just as I thought, we have a C drive and then a D drive, but they're all on the same SATA drive. So 1 disk with 2 partitions, and then there's our recovery partition at the end there. So that's interesting, I guess. Not sure why they did it that way, but that's how it came out of the box. But that gives us a very small C drive right here. So if you fill it up and it gets really full, it's going to slow things down, because once your primary partition gets full, things can start to stutter and get a little weird. So you're going to have to manage this, because that's not a lot. So as far as all the testing go, that's about what I expected, really. If you want to compare it to a gaming laptop, no. But, for the money and for what it is, it's really good. It's made well. It has more ports than most modern laptops. I like the fact that we have plenty of Type A ports. So if you're someone who needs to plug up a mouse and a keyboard, or controller, any other devices, it's going to be much easier to do that with this device. If you're not doing like 3D working or using the Unreal Engine or anything like that, if you're doing mostly business stuff, office stuff, doing maybe a little bit of light editing on the side, and playing some older games or some indie games, this will be just fine for you, especially at that price. If you're doing like all the stuff I mentioned, you might want to spend a little more money and get something fancier. But for what it is, I don't think you're going to find something that's built this well at this price that's going to be as good. And if you do, it's probably going to have 8 gigabytes of RAM and not 16, which 16 should be the bare minimum. So I'm glad to see 16 gigabytes of RAM in this. The only thing that I think is kind of a strike on this is the SATA drive, because what year is it? Like a full-on NVMe M.2 is not that much more expensive. So all the tests that I was running on here said it's running at SATA speeds. So that's a little weird. Maybe they saved $1 on that. I don't know. A couple dollars. I guess it is what it is. It still felt pretty snappy. But if you're taxing the hard drive like crazy and doing something like that, it might feel a little bit sluggish compared to like a regular M.2 or Gen 3x4 or Gen 4 or whatever. So this has been the Blackview Acebook 8. Let me know what you think in the comments about this. And you're gonna need a mouse for this, so grab one of these. It's kind of travel size. I mean, your hand doesn't shrink when you travel, so you don't want a tiny mouse, right? This is $20 right now, and it has a flawless infrared sensor, and you don't have to install any software. This video right here will show you how to change all the colors and the CPI/DPI by just holding down different buttons. So check that out on epicpants.com, and I'll see you in the comments.